Everybody, it's great to be back here again. Tomorrow's Friday, parashat Miketz, Shabbat Chanukah. And if you recall, I mentioned in certain times we see a particular word that is repetitive in regarding a biblical personality, like we spoke about Isaac, how the word gamal, camel, and the word be'er, well, come up often regarding Yitzchak. And I explained the meaning of that. I gave a class also regarding Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, about an Evan stone. I didn't get a chance to put it on internet, but the same thing regarding Yaakov Avinu. The word that's common with him is Evan, stone. Why stone? Because a certain insight came to me, and I realized, wait a second, what is the word Evan? It's a compound word meaning Av and Bennett. The same letters are in there, father and son. Now, why does stone refer to the father and son? Because Jacob is a perfect combination, a perfect unification of the two sfirot, the two midot that his father and son. Who is his father and son? Well, the father, Abraham's grandfather, and Abraham's son, Isaac. So Abraham represented love and kindness, and Isaac represented judgment. So together, love and kindness plus judgment equals truth. And that's what Jacob represented, the tiferet, the characteristic, the trait of truth, of tiferet, the perfect balance of love and kindness and judgment. And that's reflected in the stone with Jacob. And why is stone with Jacob? Because we see when Jacob first comes in the scene and he has to leave Israel, so he puts his head under the ground. He was on the Temple Mount, as we learn that section, when God folded over the ground, and he goes there to the house of God, Beit El, and he puts his head under the stones, right? The stones come together into one stone. Later on, he comes to he leaves Israel and he comes to the Mesopotamian area to find his wives, and he's meeting Rachel. So he takes that stone off the well. Very interesting. And if we follow this path, we see when he's coming back and he builds a mound of stones as a galed, as a monument, as a testimony for Lavan, his father-in-law, so they shouldn't cross over those lines. And so they're marking the boundary of Gilead. So we see, again later we see the concept with the stone regarding Jacob. I'm not going to go through all the references. But what is that stone, again, I told you, is a perfect combination of the father Abraham and the son Isaac. So that works out very well. Now, I want to continue today in this line regarding Joseph. Joseph, what's the word? If I ask you what word comes up very often in reference to Joseph, I'm sure you could all jump and say, wow, he's the dreamer, right? Cholem. And that's exactly the word. The word is chalom, dream. That comes very often with Joseph. But it's interesting, there are other words that come up with Joseph regarding bread, lechem. They sat down to have bread when they sold him and all. Joseph's in charge of the bread and feeding everybody. So bounty and bread, that's very common with Joseph as well. It's not only the word of, dream. And not only that, Joseph is known to be a great fighter. He fights against overcomes his temptations. We call tikkun habrit. So he's also a fighter. So the word in Hebrew to fight means lilchom. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because in reality here, what's fascinating is in one word, all these aspects of Joseph come up. If we look at the word chalom, what do we have over here? In the word chalom itself, we have chalam. Chalom is a dream. We have the same letters of the word lechem, bread. And also lechem can mean lachem, right, to fight. So you have those three concepts of who Joseph was all about within that one particular word itself. And here is a fascinating story, is that this realization came to me this week. I was sitting down reading my portion. I said to Leah, my wife, I just realized something. I never thought of this before, that within the word dream, you have those combinations of to be a fighter, to bread, and also to dream. All three things that relate to Joseph are hidden in one word. It's fascinating. And then I go to the synagogue a day later, and I meet a friend of mine, and he says, guess what? I was in the tomb of Joseph. And they had a gathering of parents that their children, unfortunately, are still hostage in Gaza. And they had a special prayer on their behalf. Just like Joseph got out of prison, they're praying now, and this Chanukah, they should come out of prison very quickly out of that dungeons of Hamas. And one of the mothers that her child is in captive, she gave a talk, and she mentioned this concept, and she said within the word Joseph, Chalom, that same word of dream, she saw that the bread is there, the dream is there, and she also mentioned, she mentioned one other word that I didn't think of, and she said it's also in Hebrew the same root. Lamed chet mem lachem could be lehalchim, when you want to stick something together, glue it together, or solder it. That same word could mean to combine, to bring together. So that's really fascinating because Joseph has that quality as well. So I said, my goodness, look what happened. Apparently the heavens, God opened up a certain, sometimes the energy from down there. And, when I thought about it at the beginning of the week, and then he told me this was fascinating how this came up within 2 days of, the next day was something that I had thought of myself. And someone else thought of that same understanding, which is, I felt it was divine. It was a little divine inspiration here, right? But when I was looking today and thinking about the word even in more detail, I found a couple of more fascinating things. And one of them is that the word also for Chalom has the word melach in it. And salt, right? Salt. Melach means salt. But also has the word malach. Malach is someone who's a sea person, who's one of those seamen on the boat. And we know, and I want to take it now again, what does it mean, all these different understandings? Well, Joseph, he was a ketonet pasim, he was a multicolored garment. So it's so fascinating with that. Within his word, chalom, within the word that's so prevalent regarding him, we'll have all these different aspects of him. And I was thinking about it in detail, and I was saying to myself, wait a second, there's something very, very deep here, because it's brought down in the Talmud in Nidarim that a person who wants to have, the person that could achieve to have the divine presence rest upon him has to have a couple of characteristics: being wealthy, being gibor, being powerful, a brave, mighty person, a strong person, a wealthy person, a wise person, and then it says a modest person. So I was saying, something, we look at the words here, this is fascinating, because here regarding Joseph, number one, lechem refers to being a wealthy person. Why? Because he has the bread, the bounty. Of course, the understanding is not only wealthy physically, but it's a much more meaning on a spiritual. He brings down that physical abundance, right? It's not only, it's regarding the physical powers of the individual, but of course, it can also be understood on the simple level. And that's lechem. Also, if you follow the word lochem, the same root of lechem also means to fight. Comes from the 3-letter root meaning in Hebrew, lacham, is to fight. Why? Joseph was a great fighter. What kind of fighter? Here on the metaphoric sense is where when he had to fight against the temptation, when he was tempted by the wife of Potiphar, he's known as the Yisod, the foundation of Brit, the Tikkun HaBrit, because he overcame his temptation. He was able to overcome that. And that is known, that's rooted in the word to be gibor. In order for the person to reach the divine presence to rest upon him, he has to be a gibor. A person, what does it say in the ethics of our fathers? Who is a gibor? Who is a mighty person who can capture his temptation? He can overcome his temptation. That's right there with Joseph. That's another one. I thought, okay, we have already wise person, right? Because now we have to get to the wise. We have the bread representing the wealthy person, lochem representing persons to overcome his temptations, and now we need to find, how do we find out about a wise person? Well, Joseph, as we all know, the word here within the word chalom says melach. One of the words spelled melach, as it said, salt. How is salt connected to anything? We know that someone who is spicy, it's an expression brought down in our Talmud. We know someone who's memulach, someone who's he has a lot of pilpil, a lot of spunk in him. It's a sign of wisdom. So the word melech can also represent wisdom right there alone. So we see, and of course it can also represent at the same time modesty, because we know that melech can also have that meaning as something that is has been worn down. So a modest person is something that people step on them. They've been through a lot. So that's also hinted there. Also, I said, something within his name, his characteristics of being someone that divine presence rests upon him, that he can interpret dreams, is all hinted right over here within the roots of the word of Joseph. So he maintained all those things. And of course, the word that the mother of our child that's still in hostage mentioned to bring together. Joseph's whole work is to try to gather, right? We know his name means le'esof. Yosef comes to the root to mean to gather. And that's his function of Joseph, is to be the gatherer. And when he wants to gather things together to unite together. As you know, the brothers came against him, and there was disunity, and he's trying to bring it all together. That's the beauty of Yosef HaTzadik, to bring it all together. So we see that how within all these things, it's a ketonet pasim. It's a beautiful, multifaceted garment. And when I think about it in depth, there's a lot, of course, more to discuss on this matter. But I'd like to show you another realization that I came to, which is, it looks a little unusual, but it's you'd heard of gematriot, taking the number of values of things. And I thought of something that came to mind, which was literally fascinating, and how it really connects to the concept we spoke about as well. And if we look, and this is a little bit playing a little gematria word, so we take the word Yosef and the word chalom, right? The word chalom, which is dream. We put the letters one next to the other. In other words, we put the word chalom, chet lamed vav mem, and under that we write Yosef. We write the word Yosef, which is Yosef's name, and then you read each one of those particular words as individual words. Something fascinating has happened. I don't know why I thought of this, but I just did it, and something came out which I really think is something to be thought of. It's really very, very unusual and very special. So, as we say, I hope you can connect this concept. So let's put those words together. What do we have? Well, if we take the first word of Chalom and Yosef, what do we get? Chet is the letter Chet, and Yud for Yosef is Chai. What does Chai mean? Literally 18. We get the numerical value of 18. Of course, Yosef is also known as Od Yosef Chai, which is interesting as well. And then we go to the next word, the Lamed of Chalom, and we put that with the Vav of Yosef, we get 36 in the numerical value. And then we put the Vav of Chalom, right, with the Samach of Yosef, we get 66. And then if we take the Mem of the word Chalom, we put that with the last letter of Yosef, the 80, we get 80, we get 120. So those are the numbers that we come up with. Which is fascinating is that if we take we know the number that's most common with Joseph is the number 6. And if we divide them by 6, they're each divisible by 6, which is just unbelievable. 120 divided by 6 is 20 times, and 11, 66 divided by 6, and 36 divided by 6 is 6, and 3 is 18 divided by 6. So basically, the numbers we get are 20, 11, 6, and 3. So it's not only they're all divisible by 6, but the numbers that we got, 20, 11, 6, and 3, I want to show you that they're also related to Yosef. It's fascinating. How do the number 3 related to Joseph? There are a few ways. Number 1, we said Jacob is a combination, he's the stone, he's a combination of the love and kindness and on the other side, the judgment, and he's the truth. So it's like the bottom of the triangle is Jacob. And Joseph's the bottom of another triangle. Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, he's also the bottom of another triangle, so he's the third as well. That's, again, one way. But another way, number-wise, if we see the verse that represents in the portion, or last week's portion regarding Joseph, when he is in prison and he's trying to decipher the dreams. So the dreams of the ministering of the minister of drink and the minister of bread, what are they? They have, part of the dream is they see the number 3. They one saw 3 branches of the grapevine, and the other one saw, again, 3 saleh chori, so 3 baskets, whatever it was. So Joseph says that the number 3 represents 3 days. That's again, the number 3 is right over there, connected to Joseph. Later on, we see, also in Joseph's dreams, in the beginning of the story of Joseph, what is he dreaming about? He dreams about first let's go in order. The number 6 is the next number in line. It's 3 first, then 6. 6 is Joseph's the Yesod, as we spoke about so many times. He is the 6th Sphira, right before the Malchut, when the Sphirot are divided into the last 7, so he's known as the number 6. So therefore, 6 is not only divisible by 6, but the number 6 appears in the answers, obviously. And the third one is 11. The third number is 11. What is special about Joseph and 11? Well, his dream. The dream that he has that 11 stars, Chadasa Kochavim, bow down to him. That's also connected fascinatingly to Joseph. And what about 20? Well, 20 is something that takes us way back to Jacob, not that far back, but again to Joseph's father. And what does he say in Genesis 31, verse number 41? He says, this is 20 years that I'm inside your house that I'm working so hard. And he's mentioning the word 20. Now, what made him say this? What inspired this whole thing for Jacob to leave? Well, if we go a little further back in that portion, and right before that, this takes place in Genesis 30, verse number 25, it says, and behold, Kasha Yalda Rachel Yosef, when Rachel gives birth to Joseph, so Jacob says to Lavan, Shalheini ve'elecha el mekomi latzi, send me, I want to go home. So what inspires Jacob to want to go home is the birth of Joseph, and then he's accounting within the 20 years that he spent in working for it, which is fascinating. So we see in these instances something, again, I can't explain, it's something so strange, but it's like another insight that came down, and I had no idea how I thought of this, but it just worked out very well, perfectly, and it connects so much to Yosef. Now, after saying these things, I'd like to, again, connect it to Chanukah a little bit and put it all together. And we know, that we're living in a period today of darkness and of light. And we see, on one hand, so many tragedies. Just today, a woman, 83-year-old woman, was murdered for, just being Jewish, walking in Herzliya, in the coastal area of Israel. A terrible tragedy. A ruthless barbarian just attacks her for no reason. And on the other hand, we're celebrating the lights of Chanukah. We're celebrating, such a special time in Israel. The victories over the Maccabees were able to overcome the evil forces that came against Israel way back then. And today, the same thing. We're surrounded by so many fronts, and we're overcoming evil. We're winning the wars, and we have a total victory again soon, God willing. But at the same time, we're still dealing with the hostages in prison and a lot of things going on. So it's like darkness and light. There's an expression that Rashi coins. Rashi brings us down in the book of Genesis. When it says that God, maybe I should quote Rashi, it's brought down in Genesis when God created the light, and then it says Vayavdel, and God separated between the light and darkness. And Rashi has a beautiful quote there. It's a very, very famous quote in the book of Genesis. I'd like to quote a few words. Rashi says, Lefi pshuto, this is brought down in Genesis 1 verse 4. Kach pirshu, this is how you explain the verse. Ra'au ki tov, ve'ein na'elo, ve'ein na'elo v'lachoshech, shiyu mishtamshim be'abuvia. Rashi says it's not a pretty thing that darkness and light, they actually can exist at the same time. They have two different boundaries. Therefore, God established the boundaries of light, and he established the boundaries of darkness. Because when they're mixed together, it's not obviously a good thing. We want, light should be light and darkness should be darkness. We should know the difference between good and bad, of course, and all that. But it's interesting that they say in the end of days, we're going to have a situation where we see that darkness and light are working with a buvia, like they're mixed together. And that's the end of days when we have to try to eliminate. We go back to that original plan of Hashem to separate between the light and the darkness. But at the end of days, this is part of the things we're working towards. And if anyone represents this more than any biblical character who stood for that was Yosef, who again had to deal with a lot of darkness. And he spent not only when he was thrown in the pit, then he was taken out and was thrown in the pit again. He spent a lot of time in the dungeons, in the dark. And nevertheless, he always was able to see the good, the light at the end of the tunnel, and he was always able to say, to look forward, to look and see how Hashem is making something happen, to look forward for the special thing that will come out of this. He knew how to say, and we say, Gamzulato, everything is for the best, and God will get us out of this bad situation, and everything will work out for the best. There's a reason why we have to go through this. And I think that response of Yosef is what Chanukah is all about, the story of Chanukah, that each day we're adding more and more light in the darkest time of the year, and in this time of year when it's so dark, and the days are so short. the same time, we learn from Joseph that light to be positive, to light another candle, and to realize that even in these dark times, the light will shine. We have to focus on the good, and that's what Joseph knew how to do. And that's why it so perfectly connects, to Chanukah, this whole thing. And if we look, another thing came to mind, a third thing that a certain insight came to mind regarding this whole story, is the psalm, the famous psalm we say every day, not every day, we say it on our holidays and on Shabbat. We're going to read it when we say our blessing over the bread, right? And I realized, wait a second, we say this psalm right before we bless over bread. Wow, what does that mean? It's all about Joseph. We spoke about Joseph being the bread, being the fighter, all those qualities. And what is this psalm? It's about the return to Zion. Shir HaMa'alot, a song of ascents, B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, when God returned, the exiles, just like Joseph was born, he had the incentive to bring back the people home. Joseph reflects that return to the land, the awakening, the first, as we say, our stages of Messiah in Judaism. I spoke with many times, but the first stage is the Messiah of Joseph, to gather everyone, which is not just in one individual, but it's a power of many to come back and to bring about the return of the land. This is all about Zion, coming back to Zion, which is Zion is worse. And then it says, Hayinu ki cholmim, we were dreamers. So we see the word cholmim, to dreamers, exactly connected to what? To Zion, which is the same numerical value as Joseph. It's right there. It's all about Joseph and dreaming. It's right there again. And then it says, Az yimalei tzchok pinu, then our mouths be filled with laughter and happiness. And the nations, Az yamu hagum, the nations will say, God has done greatly with these people. And we see, of course, how the nations, of course, when they witness what goes on in Israel, they can't remain silent and say, wow, something's going on. Those who are truly being honest and looking at what's going on in Israel, they see the truth. And then, Hagdil Hashem, Lasot Imanu Hayinu Smichim, tells God has done great to do with us, and we were so happy. Shuva Hashem et Shivitein, let God bring back our captivity. Ka'afikam Banegav, captivity refers here again to all those in captive, and all those who have to come out of exile, and those who are in the dungeons of Hamas. We'll see how they'll come out. Hazoim b'dima, those who are planted with tears, will reap with rejoice. And how much darkness we have to go through before we see the light, but we will see that light. Haloch yelechu v'cho, they will go crying, nosei meshach hazara, bo yavo barina nosei alontav, they will come in rejoicement, those who carry the sheaves, and the sheaves of Joseph again. So we see this song that's connected right, reflecting to redemption, coming back to the land, and that whole power of Joseph comes right before we eat our bread. We always say this psalm, how fascinating they go together with everything we spoke about, the qualities of Joseph, the fighter, those in charge of bringing bounty over the bread, those who brought everyone together, despite what he went through, and despite the reasons he had to come against the brothers and for disunity, he saw the necessary for unity amongst Joseph. And of course, we spoke about the Melech, the wisdom of Joseph, to be able to tell everyone to save, the grains in time of need. And all those things come together perfectly in perfect unification when it comes to Yosef. And therefore, he is the Yesod, he's the foundation. And we have so much to learn from his character. And this is just the beginning. Shabbat Shalom, and let us all merit soon to see our hostages come home and to see our final redemption. We will be in touch. Shabbat Shalom. Chanukah Sameach.